US President-elect Donald Trump has announced that he will nominate former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as the US ambassador to Israel. This was one of the first ambassador appointments that the new president-elect has made since winning the November 5th election. Huckabee has a close relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He has repeatedly expressed support for Jewish settlers in the West Bank, and he has backed the idea of Israel annexing parts of the occupied West Bank. On Crux Decode, what does the appointment of Mike Huckabee mean in the ongoing war with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon? Will this give Netanyahu and his far-right allies the elbow room to go ahead and annex parts of the West Bank? Does this once and for all put an end to the two-state solution and lead only to a one-state solution, with that lone state being the state of Israel? Israel already has its most pro-settler government in history, and some on the Israeli right are now hoping that Donald Trump's second stint in the White House will give them a blank check to go ahead and annex parts of the West Bank, along with razing Gaza to the ground. Trump, in his statement announcing Huckabee's appointment, said, and I quote, "Mike Huckabee loves Israel and the people of Israel. He will work tirelessly to bring about peace in the Middle East," unquote. In 2015, Huckabee had said that Israel has a stronger historical connection to the West Bank than even the United States had to Manhattan. In 2019, Huckabee said that he personally believed Israel had the right to annex parts of the West Bank. During his unsuccessful presidential run back in 2008, Huckabee said, and I quote, "There is really no such thing as a Palestinian." He's argued in the past that land for a future Palestinian state should be taken from other Arab states and not from Israel. Netanyahu considered announcing the annexation of parts of the West Bank late in Trump's first term in 2020, but he could not fully align with Trump's team on that issue. Now, not just with the appointment of Huckabee as America's new ambassador to Israel, but also the incoming ambassador of Israel to America, Yechiel Leiter, the right wing in Israel is hoping that this will be the most pro-annexation government on either side, both in Tel Aviv and in Washington, D.C. Right-wing members of Netanyahu's government have already called for annexations since Trump became victorious. The West Bank settlements are widely seen as illegal under international law. Annexing those occupied parts of the West Bank would spark a major international uproar. It could also potentially block any path to a viable Palestinian state. That would lead to widespread resentment in the Arab world. It would add to the growing flack that Israel is already receiving for the rising civilian casualties in Gaza on a daily basis. This move may not even be popular entirely within Israel. In fact, most Israelis realize that the only realistic solution to this decades-long conflict is to move to a sustainable two-state solution. Merely going ahead and annexing parts of the West Bank and integrating Gaza into Israel will not make the Palestinian question go away. It'll just be put on the back burner, only for it to explode at a later stage. Mike Huckabee is an evangelical pastor and the host of a show on Trinity Broadcasting Network. He wanted to be appointed as ambassador to Israel during Trump's first term, but at that time, Trump decided to appoint his former lawyer, David Friedman, instead. Friedman was a candidate to return to the role for a second time, but this time around, the president-elect instead chose Huckabee. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has recently announced that Yechiel Leiter will be the next Israeli ambassador to Washington. Leiter, who will assume office on the same day as Trump will assume office for a second term, which is the 20th of January, is a settler himself. He's a longtime activist for the expansion of settlements. Never before have two diplomats in charge of the US-Israel relationship had such openly pro-annexation worldviews. Israel's ultra-nationalist Minister for Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, has also said this week that Trump's electoral victory brings with it an important opportunity to push for the annexation of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Smotrich said that Israel had been only one step away from annexing these settlements during Trump's first term, and now the time has come to do it. Smotrich has said that annexation of the settlements in the West Bank is the only way to prevent a Palestinian state from ever being established, and that he had already instructed his team to prepare to work with the new Trump administration on this issue as soon as possible. If Israel were to proceed with annexing parts of the West Bank, it would likely mark the effective end of a two-state solution. Now, a two-state solution has been the framework that has been central to the peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians for decades now. The two-state solution envisions an independent Palestinian state along with Israel, but annexation would fundamentally alter the territorial landscape. It would fragment Palestinian territories, it would diminish their claim to a viable state, and it would effectively negate any realistic prospect for a negotiated settlement that is based on mutual recognition of both Israel and an independent Palestinian state and their mutual coexistence. The reaction from Arab nations and the broader international community would also be swift and severe. Historically, Arab leaders have condemned any move towards annexation as a violation of international law. For instance, recent comments from various Arab officials from Saudi Arabia to Egypt have characterized any such move for annexation as dangerous and escalatory. They have warned that this could lead to increased violence in what is already a volatile region. Jordan's foreign minister, for example, has indicated that annexation could compel Jordan to reconsider its peace treaty with Israel. Israel currently has peace agreements with Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, all of which will be under strain. The Arab League has also expressed outrage at such a plan, viewing it as an affront to Palestinian rights and sovereignty. While Western nations have historically supported Israel's right to self-determination, many are also bound by international law, which prohibits the annexation of occupied territories. It goes against one of the first tenets of the UN Charter, but that has not stopped Israel in the past, including in the most recent invasion of Gaza. The European Union has already indicated that it would use diplomatic channels to discourage such a move, even though concrete actions like sanctions, we're not quite sure how much of an impact that would have on stopping Israel. The United Nations has also warned that annexation could lead to significant instability in both the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. The UN says that could potentially trigger a new wave of violence in an already volatile region.